Rome smelled of damp earth and diesel fuel. The excavation tunnel beneath the Colle Oppio Park was narrow, its walls stitched with scaffolds, wires, and plastic tarps. A few meters above them, tourists wandered past fountains, eating gelato, unaware that Nero's palace slumbered directly below their shoes. US walked behind Hanna Varga, who held the lamp steady in her hand. Her shadow rippled over frescoes still alive with color. Birds with red wings, ivy curling forever, a painted sky that had never known rain. The palace might have been buried for centuries, but the paint still hummed with defiance. "Here," Hanna said, stopping at a fresco of a radiant disk. The rays shot outward, 8 long, 8 short. The same symbol. The sun without a sky. US touched his jacket pocket. Inside, the bronze fragment from Alexandria pulsed faintly against his ribs, as if recognizing its twin. Hanna unfolded the papyrus again. Codex fragment says, "Ignis servet, non dominat." Fire serves, it does not rule. But what kind of fire? Eternal flame? Sacred torch? Or a machine? US said quietly. Something that makes fire do more than it should. Hanna shot him a look. "You're saying Nero had an engine? That's mythology." "Maybe," US said, "but my dreams don't deal in metaphors. Not anymore." Before Hanna could answer, the air shifted. It wasn't wind. It was a tug, like gravity trying to pull him sideways. The fragment in his pocket heated. His watch ticked once, an impossible sound in waking life. US staggered against the fresco. Hanna reached for him, alarm in her voice. "Ulric?" The floor tilted. The fresco sun blazed like a real star. And then, he was gone. Heat slammed into him. US opened his eyes to find himself not in a tunnel, but in a city of marble and fire. Rome, the year 64. Smoke twisted above tiled rooftops. Flames leapt from shop fronts and temples, painting the night sky red. The air was chaos. Citizens shouting, oxen screaming, guards beating back crowds, children crying for mothers who couldn't answer. US staggered through the crowd. His watch ticked frantically. He grabbed a man rushing past. "What happened?" The man's eyes were wild. "The city burns, the gods punish us." He tore free and vanished into the flood of bodies. US turned, heart pounding. He knew the history. The Great Fire of Rome. 6 days, 10 of 14 districts destroyed. Some blamed Nero for ordering it. Others swore he tried to stop it. What if both were wrong? What if the fire had another master? And then he saw him. On a marble balcony above the chaos stood Nero himself, robes glittering in the firelight. But he wasn't singing or strumming a lyre. He clutched the railing, face pale, sweat dripping. His lips moved, whispering something too low to hear. Not a madman playing music, a terrified ruler listening to a voice only he could hear. The hairs on US's neck rose. He knew that kind of whisper. Custodian. US pushed through the stampede. Smoke clawed his throat, but he kept moving, weaving between fallen carts and burning timbers. He had to get closer. A wall of soldiers blocked the street ahead, their shields locked, spears leveled at the crowd. Behind them, fire raged through a district of wooden shops. "Out of the way," US barked. A centurion shoved him back. "No entry. This quarter is sealed by order of Caesar." Sealed? The fire wasn't a disaster to them. It was a boundary. US ducked into an alley, ran around the blockade, and emerged in a courtyard half lit by fire. The balcony loomed above, Nero's figure trembling at its edge. US climbed a cracked stairwell, taking the steps 2 at a time. The higher he went, the clearer the whisper grew. It wasn't words, not yet. It was pressure in his skull, a presence that felt like stone grinding stone. At the top, He stepped onto the balcony. Nero spun, eyes wide, as if expecting someone else. "Who are you?" "Doesn't matter," US said, scanning the air. "You hear him, don't you? The one in the fire." Nero's mouth trembled. "He promises power. Rome rebuilt, greater than ever. A house of gold that will never fall." "Domus aurea," US muttered. "He's showing you dreams." Nero's face hardened with desperation. "Dreams? No. Visions. The gods send him. With this fire I become immortal." The flames below surged as if agreeing, and in the heart of them a figure stepped forth, cloaked in black, eyes glimmering red. The Custodian. His voice was the whisper, now clear. "Emperor, fire is not your enemy. It is your servant. Burn the old city. Build the golden house. Your name will outlive marble." Nero fell to his knees, torn between awe and terror. US stepped forward. "You're lying to him." The Custodian's gaze slid to Yus. A faint smile touched his lips. "Stone, still chasing fragments you cannot carry." "You're twisting history," US snapped. "You want the world to remember Nero as a monster, so the truth of your engine stays buried." "History is pliable," the Custodian said smoothly. "Men prefer stories of villains. Simpler that way, and safer for what sleeps beneath." Behind him, through the fire, US saw it. A structure of bronze half hidden under rubble, gears glowing like molten coals. The Ignis Engine, real, alive. The Custodian spread his hands. "Take it if you dare, but every truth has weight. Are you ready to pay again?" US's chest tightened. He remembered the day he had already lost in Alexandria. His brother's laughter, gone forever. "No deal," he said. The Custodian's smile widened. "Then Rome will claim its due." A rain of sparks drifted across the balcony. Nero flinched and backed into shadow, clutching the rail with both hands. The Custodian didn't move. He didn't need to. The city did the moving for him. US stepped away from the Emperor and ran. The stairs were a chute of heat. He took them two at a time, boot soles sliding over grit and ash, shoulders skimming a wall blackened to glass. Below, a market lane had become a wind tunnel for flame. Canvas awnings roared like sails in a gale. He cut left into a narrower alley, then another. Stone, brick. A dog barking once and then not again. The crowd shoved at a barricade of carts. A girl about 8 clung to the axle of one, feet scrabbling. US scooped her up without breaking stride and passed her to a woman whose eyes were too wide to be anyone's mother and exactly right to be hers. "The river," he said, pointing downslope. "Stay against the stone. Breathe through cloth." She nodded hard, wrapped the child in her shawl, and vanished toward the Tiber with a dozen others. A pair of soldiers charged out of a side street, faces streaked with soot, fists full of sloshing buckets. One crashed to his knee, gasping. Not enough water, not for this. The city burned like a map someone had traced with oil. Past the soldiers, a cart lumbered under the weight of amphorae. Oil. US felt his stomach drop. Someone had staged this. Pitch stored where it didn't belong, stacked where a spark could find it. He veered toward the driver. "Turn back," he shouted. "Not that way." Too late. A gust lifted fire like a sheet and laid it across the cart. The amphorae went in a chain of muffled booms. Flames surged down the lane. US threw himself behind a pillar, heat flattening him like a blow. "Too eager, Stone." The voice came from the lane's far mouth, where the fire ran the slow way a snake runs. A woman stepped through it as if through bead curtains. She wore Roman clothes, but badly, as if she had dressed from a painting, and her feet made no sound. The ash didn't take her print. US pushed up, breath harsh. Friend of his? She smiled without kindness. We have a word for what you are. Trespasser. We also have a word for what you think you're doing. Theft. Then call me a thief, he said. Save your breath for someone who cares. She tilted her head, as if listening to someone he couldn't hear. He does not care, not the way you think. He keeps. I count. Names, US said. You people love names. You don't get mine, she said, and let the flame lick her hand. It twined her fingers. She flexed and it hissed. But you can have a fact. You are late. Another has already gone below. Below. The thought slid into place like a key. The city was the show. The trick was under the stage. Domus Aurea hasn't been built yet, US said. She shrugged. A name is just a future. The rooms are older than emperors. She turned and walked back into the fire. It parted for her like a curtain and fell closed again. US swallowed the taste of brass and ran toward the slope. The city pitched under him. Heat tides, collapsing roofs, a statue's arm shattering against the stones and skittering into the gutter like something alive. He found a lane that had been a lane long before Romans called themselves Roman, the kind of way that ignored grids and went where ground and water had decided to go. It ended at a culvert mouth, shaped like a frown. Water gurgled deep inside. On the lintel, a carving, a circle with rays, some long, some short, the sun without a sky, disguised as the stamp of a sewer guild. He pulled the Nero coin from his jacket, pressed it to the stone, rotated it as he had in Alexandria, until the scratched letters, Igni, kissed a long ray. The stone clicked. The culvert's mouth deepened. Cold rolled out like a living thing. He ducked and went in. The air changed from smoke to damp, from chorus to drip. Heat fled his skin and left him shivering. His watch lay in his palm, face smooth as always, hands pinned to 11:47. It ticked once, and though he knew that was impossible without gears, he took the sound like a hand on his shoulder. He moved by feel, palm to wall, counting steps the way he counted, holds on a face of granite when the dark came fast in the mountains. The tunnel bent right, then left. A ladder climbed the wall and vanished into a hole cut cleanly, not like a sewer, like a decision. He climbed. The rungs were slick. He set each foot with the patience he had learned on the kind of days when mistakes meant ambulance rides. At the top, a low stone door waited. No handle, no hinge. A carved sun on its face, rays alternating. He set the coin again and turned. Mechanism hummed with the contentment of a tool used by a hand that knew its language. Stones slid, not loudly, just surely, and a breath like vault space pushed at him. He stepped into a chamber he recognized from the papyrus, a circle under a circle. No oculus yet, just the intention of one. Cut as a shallow dish in the ceiling. The walls glittered faintly where someone had inlaid mica to act like stars by lamplight. In the center, on a plinth, the height of a bench, lay a set of bronze plates. Lines etched them. Spirals, ladders, wave marks, little suns like stamps. The Ignis Engine didn't sit here, not the machine itself. Here lay its grammar. US went to the plates as a climber goes to a line he has wanted all his life, hands open, feet quiet. He bent and read the way engineers read, first for pattern, then for mischief. The plates weren't drawings of gears alone. They were positions, times, a schedule of how light moved, how air was coaxed to move with it. Feed fire here, harvest light there, bleed heat into ground until ground sang. He took the papyrus fragment out and laid it beside the bronze. It conversed with them. Letters answered lines. A sentence he hadn't understood, moved its furniture to match a curve, and now it meant something you could build. You don't have to steal it. Hana's voice. US flinched so hard his teeth clacked. He straightened, whirling. She stood in the doorway he had come through, hair loose from its tie, lamp lifted like a small sun. Hana? She stepped into the light. Her face was wrong by a millimeter, not wrong anyone else would see. Wrong he saw, because he knew how she held her jaw when she'd slept 2 hours, how she kept one shoulder a fraction forward when she was going to argue. You can just remember it, she said, gentle. Take it in your head. Walk it out. We'll build it together, and no one has to know. His scalp prickled. He'd heard her say almost that 6 times, in 6 places. She would never say it like that here. You're not her, he said quietly. She smiled a little, the kind of smile designed to make someone step closer. Ulric, listen. Your left shoulder, he said. It's not pretending to be bored. It's waiting to pounce. Her eyes emptied, and for a heartbeat the chamber was just a room under dirt again. And then it wasn't. The woman from the fire stood where Hana had. Everything true about Hana, erased and replaced by a cleaner truth. A rival, dressed in ease. Counting again? US said. Always, she said, and slid along the wall until she stood between him and the door. You do good work for a man with a broken clock. He lifted his watch. I do better work for a man who knows he's in a dream. And yet you keep trying to treat it like a museum. Her gaze flicked to the plates. Leave them. We already took what matters. He felt it then, a dent in the pattern, a hole where a plate had sat. The set was incomplete. Someone had been here before him after all. Where is it? He asked. Up, she said. Where the city can reach it, where history can trip over it and break its ankle. She lunged. He didn't meet her head on. He sidestepped, letting her momentum carry her past, caught her wrist, and turned it in a way that would have scolded a joint in the waking world. Here it was like folding paper. She grinned as she twisted free. Good, she said. You don't fight like a scholar. Scholars I know fight meaner, he said, and flicked his coin at the wall. It struck the sun carving dead center. The chamber answered with a soft, satisfied click, and a second door cracked open opposite the first. She turned her head. He went through the second door at a run. The passage tilted up. Heat returned like a promise. He ran hunched, one hand against stone, lamplight stroking the curve ahead. Behind him, her footfalls came unhurried, the way a cat walks when it knows where the mouse hole ends. The passage delivered him into a narrow vault, with a ceiling no taller than his reach. On the far side, light chopped by moving bodies, shadows of people running past. A city above. Between him and that slit of outside, a figure leaning on the wall, as if listening to its heartbeat. The custodian didn't look up. You could walk away, he said. Memory is gentler when it is unprovoked. Gentle isn't the word I'd use, US said. You took a day I needed. You did not need it, he said mildly. You wanted it for comfort. Comfort is the first thing men imagine they cannot live without. US moved until he was level with him. What did they take? He gestured back down the passage toward the chamber. What plate did she carry? A diagram of breath, the custodian said. How to pull air through stone without smoke. A way to build light in rooms with no windows. Not bombs, US said. Bombs are latecomers, the custodian said, almost bored. Men call old tools by new names and think they have invented something that wasn't waiting. US glanced toward the slit where outside flickered. The fire's sound had changed. Less crackle, more roar, like a kiln fed with bellows. Above them, the ground vibrated, not like collapse, like construction. "You fed him this," US said. "You told Nero what to build." "I showed him what he would be shown by others," the custodian said. "If not me, then someone wearing a god's mask and a merchant's teeth. Men who build palaces do not need help. They need stories about why it is a kindness." US's watch lay cool in his palm. He could feel, under the city's noise, another rhythm. 3 beats spaced, as if by a measured hand. He remembered Hana in the tunnel earlier, teasing him about ritual, then reaching over anyway to tap the bone conduction puck she'd fastened around his wrist when they'd left the apartment. "Fail safe," she'd said. "If you get dragged, I'll ping you every 30. You'll hear bells. You come back to me, not to your guilt." 3 tones. Not Boston's. Rome's. Hers. He looked at the custodian. "I have a ladder." The custodian smiled like a parent who has watched a child carry the wrong bucket to the right well. "You have a rope you think is a ladder." "Then I'll climb wrong," US said, and sprinted. He hit the slit at a crouch, rolled through, and came up in a colonnade where heat hammered like fists. Across the courtyard, a scaffold rose against a wall. Men scurried on it like ants, hauling sheets of bronze with gloved hands. The sheets flashed like new suns. They were installing something. No, trying to cover something. He could see the curve of a dish behind the scaffold, not complete, a half-formed echo of the oculus that would one day open above the octagonal room. The counting woman came out from under the scaffold and walked toward him, casual as a stroll after rain. 2 men fell into step behind her. Dreamwalkers. Both. He could tell by the way their eyes failed to settle on one thing. One carried a coil of rope that was not rope. It was the kind of thread people used to pull a labyrinth behind them when they were afraid of forgetting how to get home. "You're in our workroom," she said. "Guests break things." "I'm just here for the blueprint," US said, and looked past her to the bronze plate mid-install. It wasn't one of the set from below. It was larger, with a cutout near its edge in the shape of a long ray, 8 of them around the circle, and between them 8 short, slots for alignment. The 3 tones rang in his bones. He moved. He didn't run at them. He ran past, angling for the scaffold, foot on crossbrace, hand on knot, up 2 levels in a breath, a third in 2. A walker grabbed his ankle. He drove his heel down into the hand, felt it give like fabric, and pulled free. The counting woman called, not annoyed, just taking inventory. 1, 2, 3. He reached the plate and slapped his watch into the long ray cutout nearest the top. It held like a magnet again, pretending there was iron here. He rotated it until that invisible 12 o'clock in his fingers, lined with a seam only the dream showed. Light slid into the plate. The bronze shuddered. A pattern lifted. Letters, lines. The missing diagram reflected in negative. He pressed the papyrus against it. The ink bled answers. A corner of the papyrus seared a dark kiss like a brand. Hands closed on his jacket from behind. He tore the papyrus free, shoved it inside, and let go. He fell 2 levels, hit a brace, rolled, hit stone with the part of his shoulder he kept for hitting stone, and came up on his knees. The walkers closed. He saw knives now, not steel, but the idea of knives. Edges that didn't glint, but promised. The bells tolled again, cleaner this time, not just inside his head. Somewhere above the city, a church that would not exist for 1,000 years sent a sound down a line to a device on a woman's wrist in a tunnel under a park. The counting woman lifted her hand. "What will you pay?" she asked, almost kind. "You know how this part works." He took 1 step back. The dish behind the scaffold gleamed, unfinished, hungry. In its curve he saw the sun without a sky, not painted, not plastered, but imagined so hard it became a door. "I paid once," he said. "Then you know it isn't enough," she said. He thought of a day on an iron roof and the shape of a laugh. He felt the hole where it should sit. He closed his hands and felt the watch's cool circle and the papyrus's brittle edge. He did not have anything to trade that wasn't himself. He looked at her. "You don't get to choose this time." She tilted her head. "We always choose." "Not when the bells pick me up." He turned and ran straight into the dish's curve. It was like running into the inside of a bell. The sound hit him in the sternum and shook out his lungs. The world tilted toward white. The custodian's voice came from nowhere and everywhere, threaded through with something he had never heard in it before. Not fear, not anger. Something like disappointment, sharpened to a tool. "Very well," he said. "If you will not pay on the way in, you will pay on the way out." A memory loosed inside US like a mooring cut, and then it was gone. He didn't know which. He only knew the shape it left, and the way that shape would let anything the right size slip through. The white took him. Cold plaster against his cheek, wet stone under his palms, the scrape of a zipper, breath that wasn't his, close and steady. "Ulric," Hannah said, voice low and very, very awake. "You're here. You stayed." He opened his eyes. The lamp's beam washed the vault. Frescoes, crack lines, the specific blue people used when they thought they had invented heaven. No fire. The only smoke was the kind old buildings exhale when they have outlasted 1,000 histories. He rolled onto his back. The watch lay in his fist, cooler than the stone. He unclenched his other hand and found the papyrus, edge charred in a tidy crescent. Hannah sat back on her heels and let out a breath she had been holding for hours. The little bone conduction puck on her wrist blinked a green. He had never seen it blink before. "I hate being right," she said. "You love being right," he croaked. She nodded. "But not about this. Triple tone brought you up twice and you didn't come. I kicked it to the hard channel and you decided to exist again." He swallowed. His throat protested. "Water?" She passed a bottle. He drank, coughed, laughed, coughed again. When he could breathe without negotiating, she held up a phone to the papyrus. "May I?" He nodded. She took the photo, then another of his face for reasons he did not ask about. He sat up slowly and looked toward the slab of plaster where the oculus would be. For a second, for the kind of second that ruins sleep later, he expected it to be open, stars where paint should be. It wasn't. The room was, as the catalog said. "Did I go far?" he asked. Hannah pursed her mouth. "I don't know where far is for you anymore, but you were gone 40 minutes, and your body forgot it was attached to you twice. That qualifies." He touched the papyrus. The new markings made sense even without the bronze set from below. Air through stone, light from heat without smoke. A way a city could glow without eating itself. It was beautiful. "It's not a bomb," he said. "It never is at first," Hannah said. "That's how bombs happen." He let that sit. She watched him, assessing damage without asking. "What did you lose?" she said finally. He closed his eyes. He didn't see rain. He didn't see a roof. He waited for a face that didn't arrive. Someone's name got caught against the cutout shape inside him and slid away. "I don't know," he said, and the honesty tasted like defeat. "That's the trick. I won't know until I reach for it, and it's not there." Hannah set the lamp down and leaned her shoulder against his. "Then we give you something new to reach for," Work, coffee, jokes I tell badly, a plan. He smiled without showing teeth. The plan is run. The plan, she said, is archives. She touched the papyrus again. If the plate you copied is real, and I hate that I just said that sentence, there should be references. Not public. Workshop records, lists of bronze orders, ventilation notes hidden under temple calendars, because the men who do difficult things always hide them inside devotions. He stood, a little unsteady, and let the room stop swaying. He looked one more time at the sealed oculus, at the sun without a sky that would one day be honest about itself, and he felt the city around him, all the centuries, all the rooms, built over rooms. Rome isn't finished, he said. Rome never is, she said, and held out her hand. He took it. Her fingers were warm and absolutely real. Outside, beyond the scaffold and the tarps, the city carried on. Scooters, a vendor's laugh, bells that belonged to churches and not to dream devices, light that served and did not rule. They walked toward the gate. Halfway up the stairs, he stopped and looked back, not at the room, but at the line where dream had been and wasn't. He felt the shape the custodian had cut out of him, invisible and terrible as a perfect tool. He didn't know whose laugh would fall through that hole later. He didn't know whose name wouldn't land when he cast it. He did know, with a gratitude that hurt, that Hannah's hand didn't slip when he squeezed. At the exit, the guard glanced up from his phone and yawned. "You two done?" "Temporarily," Hannah said, and flashed a smile most people believed. Outside, Rome's night air touched his face, warm and ordinary. The coleopio trees rustled. Someone somewhere burned chestnuts right and turned them with a paper cone. He breathed once, twice, steady. His watch, useless and truthful, lay dead in his palm. The bells were quiet. He slipped the papyrus into the hard case, and the case into his bag. The bronze fragment from Alexandria knocked softly against the side, as if to say, "I'm still here." He believed it. "We'll need permits," Hannah said, already making lists in the air with her finger. "And a librarian, who owes me a favor. And breakfast." "There's a place with terrible coffee 3 streets away," he said. "Perfect," she said. They started downhill. Above them, the park kept its secrets. Beneath them, the golden house dreamed its long, bright dream. And somewhere between, in a layer that felt thin as a held breath, the custodian watched a city cool and a man choose and counted.